Um, Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been quite a while since we've met, obviously, but we've got a number of things to talk about. And I think it's very timely given the growth in projects that it appears the airport is trying to push through. So we would like to discuss the various issues on the table, talk about different actions that are going on and other things that have kind of been in the news. And then we're going to plan to give some recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for things we'd like to see them do. We'll certainly take time to get comments from everybody and hear your thoughts on these issues. The first item I've got on my agenda, and it just came about this week, was we got Congressman Fitzpatrick got a letter from the FAA answering the questions he raised many months ago about the runway protection zone, the water pollution issues that we were concerned with. And the FAA more or less told him none of these concerns were real. There was no segmentation in the collection of projects that he was identifying. There was no water pollution issue because they believe the mitigation steps that the airport says they're going to do are going to handle all that. So they really basically told him, we don't take seriously your comments, but thank you for your letter. So that's somewhat disappointing to see what the response was. We would like to put a request into the Board of Supervisors to review the comments from the Fitzpatrick rebuttal, just because we've got Dan Grenier on the board and he's an expert in many of these matters. And I think we should have him have his comments on what he thought of the FAA response. Any of the panel members want to comment on that?
Have that go forward. I'll put a motion to approve.
Okay, anybody second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we will have a couple of different items we're going to be requesting the Board of Supervisors to respond to. So that'll be the first one on the list of things we want them to do. Speaking of the FAA, I received an email link from Barbara Lickman, not a personal email, but basically just her website putting out messages that the FAA has basically also given a total rebuttal to the Congressional Quiet Skies Caucus that put out a message that they wanted to see new regulations put in, new studies about noise, and the FAA came back and told them, we're not going to do any of that. Everything we're doing is fine. The idea of making noise measurements is absurd. And they just basically put the whole thing down. So I think if one of the recommendations I think we want to come out with from tonight is to consider putting some letters out from the public to senators and congressmen. And if the FAA is completely ignoring congressional direction about how they should be handling the noise issues, then that needs to be brought to their attention. So, that's just another piece of news to bring up. Furthermore, in the past few months, I talked to the New Jersey Citizens Against.
So what's the action item on that? Is it Bram puts it in their communications? What?
Yeah, I think Bram should definitely put that in their communications. I can forward the Barbara Lickman link where that is brought out. But certainly publishing that the FAA is ignoring the congressional direction like that is something we should do. But I think we're going to probably want to come up with some letters that citizens are writing, and maybe the Board of Supervisors, that's another possibility, to say the FAA should not be completely ignoring these directions and they're affecting us directly, which is what we've been complaining about. So,
I mean, you use the word direction. I'm not sure the caucus has the right to direct. I mean, that's right. What the FAA does. The caucus is a body that's Rich. You have to unmute yourself. Your lips are moving, but nothing's coming out. Rich, you have to unmute yourself.
okay. So I was looking online for the Barbara Lickman article to see what it was. I think they actually had sent them something that was law and said, you have to follow this. And they came back and said, we don't have to follow that. That's while I was unmuted there, I was starting to search for that. So I will look that up and pass that out to everyone tonight.
But there's a difference on whether it's law or if they're lobbying. Right. So.
Right. So I just saw it before the meeting. It's like, well, I better put that on the agenda. So I will find out what that, I will forward that reference so everybody knows what the specifics were there. Okay, so in the contact with the New Jersey Citizens Against Noise or Airport Noise, they had a recommendation to ask, there's a publication out called Airport Noise Review, and they do articles about airport noise and publish news about that, but it's actually a trade journal that you have to be registered or purchase, but it is circulated in FAA circles and airport circles, and so I have encouraged Trenton Threatened Skies to contact the editor for Airport Noise Review, and the editor for Airport Noise Review is willing to make an article about the Trenton Mercer situation, but it's only if there's some specific news to bring up. Their lawsuit against the FAA certainly qualifies as news. And so I've encouraged them to pursue that. At the moment, I understand that TTS folks are very busy with their lawsuit and fundraising and that kind of stuff. So they haven't been able to follow up on their airport noise review. But that's another potential source that could send information about what the airport is doing, sort of at a different level, because it's more of a professional journal level. So I don't think the FAA would like seeing a very negative article about Trenton Mercer Airport and how things are going with the FAA. And the Airport Noise Review would certainly be sympathetic to the perspective we've got on what's going on there. So that's just another piece of news update, and nothing concrete has happened on that because the TTS folks are just too busy at the moment. Okay, so we had a suggestion from Peter, who's not on here at the moment, to come up with letters that are jointly signed by New Jersey and PA residents to send to our politicians, senator level, as well as House representatives, and sort of explain our plight, explain the pollution issues, explain the noise issues, explain the budget issues, and try to put it to them with a consolidate or a kind of a collective set of opinion, positions from both sides of the river, and just get them to respond to this. So that's just another thing to put out that I think, I don't know if we need a motion for that, because I think it wouldn't be really a panel issue as much as getting citizens who are going to be willing to co-sign and send that to the relative politicians.
Richard, I don't think that that's something we need to vote on. I mean, my understanding is Peter said he would send that letter under his name and he would like to have somebody from TTS co-sign it with him. It wasn't having lots of names, but he had an Inda Menendez, and it would be sent to Menendez. That was my understanding. I might be wrong.
No,
And
it was, but I think we ought to send a similar letter or the same letter to Casey and maybe Kumi. I mean, we already have Fitzpatrick on our side, but he needs more clout than we're going to have from him alone. And I think we should also send it to Bonnie Watson Coleman and just let her be on the record that she's not going to support the issue.
well, then you should send it to Booker too. But in the very short term, Peter has the in with Menendez, and we should get that one first, and then send it to the rest. But they're sending it as not as airport review panel, but as citizens.
Right.
So
that's why I said I don't think
it doesn't need to have a vote on this.
Right. I said I don't think we need a motion on this, but I wanted to bring it up. And I don't think anybody from TTS is on the line at the moment, but I think they'd be willing to co-sign a letter like that. All right. And TTS is still pursuing their lawsuit. They have asked for an extension, which I think they may have through the rest of the summer to continue working on their case. They're making the case about segmentation and mostly water pollution is what they've told me. And they're still doing their fundraising. They're still working with Potter on this issue, but that's still ongoing. And Potter apparently has asked the county to inform him if there's any movement on the runway protection project while this lawsuit is still pending, because it should not be going forward while they have this lawsuit going. Okay, I think the last thing I'll mention, just as sort of new news, is the TTS folks had dug up quite a bit of information about the projects that the airport is pursuing. There were maybe a dozen, 15 different projects that they were pushing that were really oriented towards making a great looking facility for other airports. For other airlines to come in. And one of the recent freeholder meetings, they were debating whether to authorize funding for recruiting other airlines to come in. And so they were actually marketing the airport. And so I made comments to the freeholders meeting saying that really was disingenuous, because the whole EA was based on their 1% growth rate. And if they've got their EA approved so they can go ahead with the projects, but then they go out and market for a much larger capacity, that really is a lousy way to for the freeholders could represent their citizens by saying, hold on, we need to go do a better job of doing an environmental assessment rather than just approving this based on the old EA. So Joe is looking at the budget issues and what the finances are for that. We're not prepared to talk on that yet, but that is something else that's going on in the background.
Hey, Richard.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just as a one point on that, and we need to get the actual details, but in the airport section of the budget, they have $177 million as grants or funds coming in for various projects, but they didn't specify the source and the corresponding use. And so we are going to go after and drill down and get the detail of that $177 million. Now, yes, the 15 projects you listed are in a separate section of the budget in terms of projects they want to do, but they have not related the two sections of the budget, and that's where we want them to do.
Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you for pursuing that, Joe. Panel members, anything else you would like to bring up?
Yeah, well, so far we were asking the Board of Supervisors, particularly Dan Grenier, to respond to comment on the FAA response to Fitzpatrick. The other thing we talked about was having the Board of Supervisors contact Mercer County to find out when they were going to have the Pennsylvania review that they committed to having, on the terminal project.
Right.
They indicated that they would have that like 6 months ago, and so we want to have that. I think we want to have them find that out. Governmental agency to governmental agency.
Well, there was that suggestion, which we can vote on to ask the board that. And then there was asking the board to ask the freeholders to inform them about any upcoming submission of an EA for the terminal, that we be informed of that directly, or that they be informed of that directly, because the timing on that will be critical. So it was 2 requests that they would be making of the freeholders.
And they would both come out of the planning documents that were published by the engineering firm.
Okay.
I think they're kind of both on the same page in their timelines.
Okay. Is that something we need to vote on, to ask the Board of Supervisors that?
Approve the motion as first.
Second.
Okay. So in the letter to the supervisors, we'll have 3 items now for Grenier's review of the FAA response, and then the 2 requests for information from the freeholders.
When we make that request, we should attach the pages from the pages from the planning document where they commit to doing an EA and doing the Pennsylvania meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. We can act on that pretty quickly. Anybody else? Okay, I think we could go ahead to public comment if there's nothing else. Glenn, would you like to contribute anything here?
Just I've attended many of the freeholders meetings and spoken, and particularly bringing up an issue. I'm not sure it's our issue, LMT, but just to get on the radar screen, the idea of continuing airport expansion in the face of unprecedented downturn in travel due to the pandemic is just nuts. I mean, it just flies in the face of any kind of reason. In fact, today there was an interview published with the CEO of Airbnb, and he's on the record as saying travel has changed forever. So again, I'm not sure that's our angle, but certainly from the point of view of the citizens of Mercer County and their investments in the airport, I certainly hope that would be a big concern.
Can I add a comment to that, please?
Please go ahead.
While the problem with that type of a statement coming from them and trying to use that, they can see that, they could always argue that, that's a short-term look, and we're looking at this for the long haul, and the fact that there's an isolated, supposedly their language, pandemic that's slowing down traffic and service doesn't warrant no construction.
Yeah, can I respond?
Sure.
Yeah, I hope you will. Go ahead.
One of the freeholders even went so far as to say, gee, there were other regional airports there was just a thing in the news about Frontier Airlines asked the FAA if they could stop service. The FAA said no. But the point is, Frontier has pulled out of certain regional airports, and that's come to the attention of the freeholders. I mean, the question is, are they going to be building a nice new facility for no traffic too? So it's, I think it's short-sighted to think that the impact of the pandemic is not going to have a longer-term impact, especially on regional airports.
And Joe, I agree that might be the response they have, but it doesn't hurt us to bring that point out and, hopefully excite some of the other residents who they're spending money to say, oh, wait a minute, we shouldn't be spending it here. If we just get a few of the citizens riled up, by saying it, then, we should say it.
And I actually agree, but I think we have to,
You're cutting out or dropped.
Joe, we didn't hear what
Hello?
you said.
We lost you there, Joe?
Yeah, Joe left.
Okay, I think he dropped off. But another point to make regarding the expenditure is usually many of these projects are with federal funds, and we have every bit of right to complain about where our federal tax dollars are being spent if we think this project doesn't make sense in light of the travel projections.
Hey, Rich, I'll just make a couple quick points with respect to the COVID. The airlines that took the federal money, which as far as I know is almost all of them, were required to maintain certain service through September. So they, even with no people on the planes, they were required to fly certain routes. That's number one. Number two, the airlines seem to be looking at the summer of 2021 as kind of a benchmark, and then maybe summer of 2022 to be whole again. So it's kind of a longer term look by the airlines. Certainly nobody's talking about permanent, life changing forever kind of things. It's just, 1 to 2 years out.
Well, and I think to Joe's point, that's what the airport would argue is these projects are not projects to help them in the fall. They're longer term than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's a very optimistic view of how quickly the public is going to go flocking back to airplanes. None of us know what the future holds, right? I think if you look at that projection coming from the airline industry, it's pretty self-serving. They're trying to not lose investment, and they're trying to not go out of business in the meantime. So of course they're going to say that. Whether it's really true or not, I don't know.
We're not going to solve that problem.
No, we're not. But anyway, in terms of,
we agree with your point. I think we agree with your point that we should make the case in public that flying is down, and therefore they shouldn't be investing all their county money in this. Whether it's true or not, we should put that statement out there. So which solves your problem, Glenn, right? That's what your point is.
Yep. I'm just going to read you. I'm going to close. I know you want to close the topic. I'm going to read you a quote from article today. It's in. It was published in MarketWatch.com, and it's from Brian Chesky, the CEO and founder of Airbnb. Quote, "I will go on the record to say that travel will never, ever go back to the way it was pre-COVID. It just won't. He predicted that vacationers will stay closer to home in the future, largely limiting their travel to places within driving distance." ... But again, in terms of citing a reputable source, look, there's lots of opinions. Nobody knows the future. But look, here's the CEO of Airbnb saying, gee, this is going to be a lot about, not necessarily a return to, let the good times roll that we had pre-COVID. So thanks. I'll send you that link to that article if anybody's interested.
Yeah, please do. Thanks, Glenn.
Sure. Thank you.
Judy, do you have any comments?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, okay, fine. I wasn't sure. I think there's a little bit of a delay. Okay, I have three things to mention. One is more, I guess you talked about speaking to Dan Grenier about some of his expertise, and I don't know whether or not I was going to call him personally or just see if you go through the board. All the projects, many of the projects that they're doing at Trenton, like changing the runways, connectors, parallel taxiways, not runway, parallel taxiways, they're all using short form EA forms, which means they don't have to have any public comment. But it says very specifically on the short EA form that you cannot use that if there's sufficient public controversy. And I would say when they have a petition with 1,400 signatures from both sides of the river that want an EIS, that constitutes public controversy. So I thought I'd start first with Dan or somebody who knows something about these short form EAs. Of course, this was mentioned to the freeholders, but they're not listening. So any comment as about how you might go about trying to pursue that answer? Or I would, just an idea.
Bringing it up with Dan probably makes sense just because he's familiar with that whole area. Whether to bring it up at sort of the political level for like a Fitzpatrick rebuttal to their rebuttal. I don't know. We'll have to let other people comment here. Anybody else have an opinion on that?
Why not do both? Why are we limited to one track? Rich?
We're certainly not limited to one track.
No, I'm saying, I think the idea is a good idea, and presenting them both may have two answers going into that agency instead of one, and build a groundswell.
Peter, when you say that agency, what?
I'm saying in response to the EA, whoever is, would require the EA to be in a more formal fashion because of the controversy as you cited.
But the first question is Judy's asking whether she would go directly to Dan or go through the task force. But I mean, Judy has the background work on it. I would say the task force introduce Judy as, a volunteer working on the task force, and then let her. So it's clear that it's coming from the task force, but she takes the lead on it.
However, I'm more concerned about substance and not form, whether it's task force or Judy and the task force. I thought pursuing both to Fitzpatrick and to Grenier on behalf of the task force recommendations with Judy's support or vice versa is something worth pursuing.
I agree.
Okay. And just as a matter of clarification, earlier was talking about the senator in New Jersey. It's not that I have I have a close working relationship. It could be misconstrued as there's something more nefarious than that. It's just I've worked with him in the past, so he knows me as a given name. That's all. No confusion.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. So from that, I think I want to make sure I've got some substance on this, or some, if this is correct, what I'm thinking. And if so, I agree that then I would think, at a minimum, the LMT board should send letters directly to the FAA and any other elected people that we could get to follow up on this. Because so either way, that's where I'll take it. The other one was Rich's comment about the airport noise review and information about the lawsuit. I had seen some comments about that, and I will try to pursue that. I wasn't knowledgeable enough about what that's what you want, what you were talking about there, but I will take that and try to get an article and and I'll probably touch back with you, Rich, about what your thoughts were and try to get something to them to publish about the lawsuit. And I'll touch base with TTS and get their blessing, but I'm sure they would have no problems with us doing that.
I think their issue is manpower and getting, somebody who could work on that. And so if you touch base with them, because it is their lawsuit and they will be featured in this, they definitely have to be on board with it. So I think that's a great idea. If you're willing to take that on, it may just kick it over the edge and get something done on it.
Okay. All right. And the third thing, it has to do with outreach, because I know that's come up a couple times today, and it obviously comes up all the time. I do think that's one of the areas where at the moment TTS is stretched and doesn't have, they're doing, obviously communicating what they're learning to the citizens is part of their agenda to educate the citizens about the impact of the airport on them. Just personally, do any of you have any ideas as to people who we could potentially, who are directly affected by the airport or in the Bucks or Mercer area, that would specialize in outreach? Because I haven't found them myself. And instead of reinventing the wheel, I'd like to get to help at least some consult of some experts in that area.
I don't know a lot honestly myself. We've had people come to meetings in the past who make comments about it and what they could do, but they're only there for one or two meetings. And I wouldn't be able to identify the person and say, let's go after that person and ask them to do this. Okay.
I know it's none of your bailiwicks probably, and it's not really mine. So let me just leave that out there, that if you come across someone who has an expertise or knows of someone, email me and give me a name, because I have some I'll try to pursue, but I haven't found someone yet. Oh.
Okay, Don or Holly, do you have any comments on that? You guys have the broadest set of contacts of anybody with an interest in this.
I have to apologize. I was on, Sue Herman was talking to me and I was trying to listen to you, help her, and I didn't hear that part of the conversation. So I can't respond. I'm sorry.
So, Holly, let me summarize. Just looking for consults on outreach programs so that we don't reinvent the wheel. How to do a really big citizen awareness campaign, and how the best way is to what the process of doing that.
Well, TTS is having a meeting tomorrow that I think we'll be discussing that.
Right. So I put it out here for just to see if anyone else had any contacts. And we have our ideas, right? But instead of reinventing the wheel, I'd rather have a professional consult and one who's maybe got some skin in the game.
Makes sense.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, I don't have any additional comment. Frankly, the one thing I do want to, it was really complicated to try to get in tonight. And finally, I'm in Zoom. If I had known that Zoom was available to begin with, I think that would have been ideal. But on the website, there was no real indication of that. So I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out what to mute, what not to mute, and how to hear this conversation. Missed a lot of the discussion as a result.
Yeah, apologies. I'm going to ask the board if there's a better way to put out the information here. I was talking with them early last week about getting this date, and we got approval for the date. And every day I was asking, could we get something posted or how to get people connected? Unfortunately, the information didn't come out really until today. So we can talk about how to try to get that better. Typically we're meeting on Thursdays. And so if they put out the week's activities Sunday or Monday, then, we have a better chance of being prepared. I wanted to have this meeting tonight so that we could at least have an input to the board's meeting for Wednesday. with at least a handful of items we've talked about submitting to them. So,
Hey,
unfortunately,
Rich.
go ahead.
Sorry, it's all. I didn't mean to interrupt. Is there a way just to announce this meeting via a Zoom instead of all the other options in the future? Because we know we don't have a gazillion people calling in, and I think most people are familiar with Zoom. I think it would be a lot less aggravating. I don't know if anybody from TTS has tried to dial in, but I have to admit that if they were trying, I'm pretty tech savvy, having just come off of a fully virtual conference of over 5,000 attendees. And this was like, Don will attest, I was ready to like throw the phone and the computer out the window.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. All we had to say is it's a Zoom meeting and here's the ID, and
give a phone number. And give a phone number, and if someone can't use Zoom, they could just dial into the Zoom number and be connected.
Yeah, that would be.
We will make that request, Holly. I had the same frustration trying to get in, and we've got to be able to do better to get our small group of participants together. So.
Well, particularly if we're going to be working on marketing and stuff, I was going to say, heck, I've got a Zoom account. I'll give it to you if you want to use our Zoom account. I don't care. But if we're going to grow any type of campaign, meetings like this are essential because we probably won't be meeting in person for a while. So it would behoove us to get this as smooth as possible. And this is no reflection on the tech deck, as we call the tech team, who's helping us tonight.
Right. No, they helped us get through the rough spots getting started, but getting the information out better is, I think we've got to ask about how to get that better. When we do the public meeting, they wanted to go through their website, so there was announced officially. Whereas it would have been simpler just to have a Zoom meeting. We've done Zoom meetings with the TTS people before, right? And so I'll try. Definitely give it a try.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Sue dropped off.
No, I'm back, Richard. I called in for the third time. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go loud and clear. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for holding this meeting. I just want to say that our RTS has asked the Board of Supervisors twice now, once at the May 20th board meeting, and then at the June 10th meeting, we reiterated a call for action to the Makefield Township supervisors and Pennsylvania politicians up the line to the federal level, asking that the board place a topic on a near future board agenda. The topic we asked for is Trenton Mercer Airport education discussion. And we asked that during that agenda item, they educate residents about the toxic effects that unleashed PFOS and PFOA contamination will have on our water supply and the health of our families. And B, that they have Pennsylvania politicians up the line through the federal level attend and outline the strategy for preventing such contamination to our water supply. It has been frightening to observe the Mercer County freeholders during the past few months approve projects where clearly there has not been appropriate environmental review, where clearly the public has apprised them and formal documents have apprised them of the PFOS and PFOA contamination, of mercury and other contaminants. And despite the risk of the health to their residents, they continue to approve these projects. So we feel as though we're out of time and we need the public in Pennsylvania to start to be educated as to what's going to be happening to our water. And perhaps that will put the pressure on politicians up the line through the federal level to get active. Because it's unacceptable that Toomey and Casey haven't gotten involved with this issue yet. And there's nothing short of the public realizing the dire straits we're in to get them involved, in our opinion. So that's just an update from our RTS.
Okay, you say you brought that up with the Board of Supervisors. Did they have any feedback or bring it up as an agenda item or anything?
They have not, but we plan on sending formal correspondence to them. I mean, quite frankly, we've been greatly disappointed in the Board of Supervisors' lack of action on this issue. They have not shown strong leadership or a proactive stance at all on this issue. So we're not surprised that they didn't respond and say that they'd do this. Quite frankly, it's being brought up at midnight because that's where public comment has been moved for the Board of Supervisors meeting. So that kind of lets you know what degree of respect the public is getting these days. But in any event, we will be sending them a formal communication, and the copy list is going to be far and wide. So they will be aware that it's not just a public comment request, that it's a formal request. And we look forward to the response and certainly hope they'll do it because we believe citizens are going to be highly interested in the education item.
Okay. I mean, certainly it's a great idea to get people more educated, and the boards, you know, I don't know how to anticipate their response, but whether they want to have links on their website to studies on, you know, the kinds of things that TTS was identifying. TTS has put out lots of links to NIH studies on health effects of small particulates, things like that. You know, they've cited them at some of the freeholder meetings. Maybe there's a way to get them to do that, but you know, we'll have to gauge their response to how much of this they want to put on their website, or how we would go about doing that education.
Well, we're going to be asking for it to be done publicly at a Board of Supervisors meeting, and I certainly hope that our supervisors will oblige. That's their job, to take care of our health, safety, and welfare. And I believe we have a right, if our water is being poisoned and our Pennsylvania politicians aren't doing enough about it to change the landscape, to have them come out on the record. And first of all, educate themselves as to how grave the issue is, and educate and let even the federal politicians know there's some skin in the game. I don't believe the citizenry is going to be happy about the prospect of that contamination being in our drinking water. And Dan Grenier has said you really can't eliminate it. So I think if we want citizens to become active, they'll become very active. And I will say this, the board can choose not to make it an agenda item, but we're going to be educating the citizenry ourselves. So they can either get ahead of it and look like leaders on the issue, or they can look like people who are indifferent, which quite frankly is our take. They can look indifferent and suffer the consequences that way. The choice will be theirs, but we will be educating the citizenry as to the grave condition that exists.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing to our attention that you've been approaching them about that. All right. Ralph, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
No, it's just that I share everyone's concern about the spending on the airport in a time where airport transportation is not happening. And it's irresponsible, and we should be calling the Mercer County freeholders on that publicly, too. Our lawmakers should be doing that. It's our federal dollars that they're wasting over there. And I would urge you, wherever there's a decision, should we ask the board to do it, or should we do it outside the board? I urge the airport review panel to put this very firmly in the board's lap and ask them to put it in formal communication to all other politicians. It's the written word that carries the day. And this is a political problem. We need to light the fire under the politicians, and that's by written communication from politicians to politicians.
Well,
so there's a paper trail that holds people accountable.
Right. We've seen where it's gone with the local politicians, and Steve Santasiero usually says it's a matter of getting people out, banging on doors and handing out pamphlets, and he tends to deflect it from being just leaving it in the hands of the politicians. Nevertheless, I think we should re-engage with that political group and, press our case here and point out what's being spent, how big the project expansions are, what the new information on pollution is, and that we want that information to go up the chain. So I agree with all your points. Thanks, Sue.
Yeah, I also think, Richard, we're done, our RTS is done counting on the politicians because they've shown that they're not proactive enough. And we still feel Pennsylvania politicians have a responsibility, given the grave health consequences of what's happening, to become active up through the federal level. So we're going to be holding them accountable for doing that, regardless of whether they feel there are enough yard signs going up in Mercer County, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to buy into that anymore. It's too serious a consequence that's at stake. Hopefully they'll figure it out and they'll take some responsibility themselves on this Pennsylvania side, because I can tell you on the Mercer side, the freeholders have shown that they're subservient to the airport, to Brian Hughes, and to the FAA, and they have no shame. They have absolutely no shame to what level they'll stoop, and we know that above the freeholder level, they're indifferent.
We understand. And, we're part of the fight and trying to make our comments and all. So I want to give Ralph G. a chance to have a comment. He is the only one who hasn't had a shot at it here.
Hi. I was wondering how much, so this is my first meeting here. I was wondering how much state and local finances are financing this, because I know the budgets for every state and local jurisdiction around the country are going to get clobbered. There's no sales tax, sales tax has been really hurt very badly. Unemployment rates up, property taxes are going to be, some people are going to be delinquent. This is a great time to build an optional expansion of an airport. I haven't heard anybody address it from that angle.
Ralph, which side of the river do you live on?
Earlier in the meeting, one of the attendants did bring up the issue about this is not the right time, and we did have some minor discussions in terms of how to form that argument. But your point's well taken. You're correct.
Ralph, I think, well, first of all,
we don't have it for attendance. We have the others. What is your last name?
D. Caesar, DECESARE.
And are you in New Jersey or Pennsylvania? LMT.
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay, great. I think maybe your question. And Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the projects for the airport end up being paid 90% by the FAA, 5% state, and 5% by the county.
That's in general correct. Sometimes it's just 10% of the county and nothing from the state. But you're definitely 85% within the ballpark.
And I think Judy got some information that's indicated the tower was not going to be funded by the FAA in that way, and so they were going to do bonds for the tower. Is that right, Judy?
Can you hear me? Am I muted?
We can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I actually I don't remember saying that about the tower, but what I do believe is true, and I think Joe will end up confirming this when he looks at the budget, that even though the FAA supposedly is paying 85 to 90%, they're paying that by Mercer County taking a 40-year bond out and paying back the FAA with the passenger facility fees. over that period of time. So that if you're asking about the burden on the Mercer County taxpayers, it could be huge if the air flight is cut back for so many years, or they never get to where they think they're going to be, and so they're paying off this $135 million terminal with $4 million of your MPSCs. So,
and that validates why they're so aggressive in bringing in new airlines and wanting to expand beyond what they originally had in their plan.
Certainly.
Possibly. I think this has always been their plan. So.
And Ralph, I don't know if you're connected with the TTS folks, but you might want to connect with them also. I'm sure they would love the support from somebody in New Jersey, and welcome to come here all the time. But
Ralph, have you gone to the Trenton Threatened Skies website by any chance?
No, I haven't. This issues, as you well know, has been around for a while. And I used to live in Lawrenceville, and it was right under the flight path. And, East Wind Airlines would rattle my shutters when they would make their approach at landing. Now I'm in Pennington. I could see the Frontier off to the side. I'm not really lined up with the runway, but the issue is still important to me. So I've been to some of these meetings for over 10 years now.
Right.
I'll check out the website.
Yeah, take a look at their website because they have a lot of information there, and you could connect with them. And like Joanne said, they'd love to have another voice and help in working on this problem.
I'll do that.
Ralph?
Yeah.
This is Holly Bussey. I'm president of BRAM, which is been around probably as long as you've been watching the issues. Just to give you a quick follow-up and building on what Rich was saying is the importance of contacting Trenton Threatened Skies is the political nature of all this has shifted since the first round in the East Wind days. I've been involved with it since the beginning. So it really is a New Jersey directive. Pennsylvania has limited, but we keep trying to be that thorn in the side to bring coalition forces together as best we can. But TTS is really to the point that they're trying to lead the charge and really get the New Jersey people involved. So if they heard from you, or if you would check out their website, they have an excellent website. It's very dynamic. I think they would appreciate hearing from New Jersey people. That would be very helpful.
Okay. I've probably been on your mailing list forever, and working from home and not commuting anymore, more time to get on these conference calls.
Great. Glad to have him back.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the input, and talk to your neighbors. Bring people in and look at that website, because they're putting a lot of fresh energy into this problem, and it's really encouraging.
Will do.
All right, so we've got our list of action items to the panel. I'll write up some notes for the letter to the Board of Supervisors and send it around, get everybody's concurrence on it so we can get it into this upcoming meeting. I'd like to give them some feedback. I understand we haven't been talking to them for a little while here, and so I think it's important to get back on their radar and let them know that the panel's recommending this stuff, and that should help all the other groups who are pushing, like RTS, these agendas, and that gets, we just put it on their table and say, this is still relevant, this is still happening, these are why they're important issues, and this is why some of your residents are still caring about this.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Richard, how will you present the letter to the board at this upcoming meeting? During what agenda item will you do that?
I just want to give feedback to, they always have a little section where they talk to the supervisors about their topic areas. And I know, our liaison is on vacation this week, so I don't know if he will actually be commenting, but I will send it to him. He could send it in. But when they ask the liaisons to comment on the various committees they're working on, we would like to have an input for that. So it's not so much that we're getting on an agenda item as much as having input when they bring up the topic.
Okay, thank you. So it's at the end of the meeting. It's
Right.
very close to the end of the meeting then.
I know it's close to the end of the
Which
meeting.
is kind of a shame.
But at least we, want to be relevant and they know that we're here and there's still an issue to be resolved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, that's it. Anybody else on the panel have a comment or input they want to make?
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Well done, Rich.
Okay, guys, thanks for your time and patience. And, all the efforts getting in, we'll try to make the next one smoother. Okay?
Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.